So I just watched the Dune movies and I need to talk about it. For background, my knowledge of Dune is non-existent. The only thing I knew about it was Timothy Chalamet was in it and Zendaya was in it. That was it. I didn't know any of the lore, the backstory, the factions, what even the premise is of Dune, why it's called Dune, literally anything. I heard people mention spice. I was like, what? Spice? Didn't know anything. But now, after watching the movies back to back, I'm hooked. I'm all in on this Dune universe thing. And I want to know more. Like, I want to read books now. If there's books in this universe, if there's games, I want to play them that are in this universe. If there's other shows, maybe I'll go back and watch. I know there was like, what, 2 older Dune movies? Maybe I'll go back and watch those. But I think overall, those are fantastic movies, and to any sci-fi fan, I would recommend them to you. 100% watch these. I think they are, if not some of the best shot movies I've ever seen in my life. And I would put some of the battle sequences with I'm talking combining the cinematography, the score, the choreography of the battles, the way, the whole structure and how it's shot. I think you could put some of the battles that are in these movies up there with some of the Game of Thrones, like Battle of the Bastards, or even Lord of the Rings. The fights are phenomenal. Characters, I think all of them are great. Timothy Chalamet's Paul Atreides, it's a great character. Seeing him start as you see him when the first movie starts, you just see him, he's trying to use this thing, like his voice. His mom tells him to tell her to get him water. And at the time I'm like, what? Like, are you trying to get him to use confidence to tell you to get him water? But then I realize it's a voice thing, like he has the Thum, like it's Skyrim. And I'm like, okay, so clearly you must know that you're somewhat special. And then as the movie continues, you start to see that he's like really knowledgeable about the Fremen, and he does all this studying and stuff, and he fights and he knows how to fight. He's a skilled fighter, and he doesn't really want to take on the Atreides name or do what his dad did, right? But they eventually get sent to Arrakis, and then some stuff happens, and he eventually gets integrated into the Freeman culture after an assault on their base, and he stumbles upon him, has to essentially prove himself. And even the Fremen are surprised that he's like knowledgeable in their culture, somewhat knows the language, put on the, what's it called, the slip suit, or I forgot the name of the suit, but he put that on just fine. And even the ecologist was like surprised that he even properly put that on, like it wasn't his first time or something. And I think just his character arc leading into the second movie and then really coming to fruition at the later half of the second film is so good. And this will be spoilers. It's been out for, first one's been out for a couple of years now, and the second one's been out for like a couple months. So if you haven't seen it, I would stop here if you don't want any spoilers for the character arcs. But anyway, I don't know what you want to call the scene, the silence scene. To me, it's like when he really gets his confidence, like his nuts, and wears who he is, and like really realizes, yeah, you know what? I am the Lisan al-Gaib, or whatever. I think that was the name. He's like, I really am him. Like, I am the prophet. And then after he drinks the worm water or blood, he gets in there and it literally tells everyone, I'm the leader. I will lead you to where I'm at. And it's just like this whole, it's almost like a payoff to him developing into that role, from being with the Atreides, the murder of his family, him being lost, being found by the Fremen, him integrating, meeting Zendaya and all this other stuff and learning their ways of the culture, fighting with them, gaining their trust, still being really humble when it comes to him being the so-called prophet, because he knows his mom is spreading these lies, or just trying to make people believe what she wants them to believe, to eventually him being like, okay, if we're going to put an end to this, and these Hyrokans, there's so many names that are confusing, and I think that's right. whatever the H names are, the black faction with the weird oil and stuff, the big fucking Jabba the Hutt fat guy. You know, I lost my train of thought, but I just think his arc is awesome. I think Zendaya's character is interesting because you can tell that she never fully trusts Paul, even with him proving himself like he's a Fremen now. He literally rode one of the sandworms. It was a grandfather worm too, like a giga huge one. You know, he's in their culture. He's had enough spice to where his eyes glow blue now, and he's done all these things, and you can tell that she trusts him to a certain extent. But even some of the Fremen still see him as an outsider, not really a Fremen. So it's interesting to kind of see that dynamic play out. And she's the only one, if you pay attention, she never willingly kneels to Paul Atreides. Even when he's given the big dick speech saying, I'm him, you will follow me, I will lead you to greener paradise, like that whole thing, she's standing. At the end of the battle with Fade, the champion of the Emperor, she's still standing. Like, she does not kneel to him, and I think there's some sort of respect there between her and Paul. Like, Paul, I don't think is bothered by her not kneeling to him. I don't know, it's just a cool thing. And I think one of my favorite characters has to be Stilgar. He is so... He's got humor to him, but he's very serious and really into the culture of the Fremen, and is very, do you want to call it religious? He really believes the written prophecy of Lisan al-Gaib, or I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing that name, but the prophet essentially. And, you know, he's constantly being mind blown at Paul's ability to overcome these challenges, and he just keeps being like, as it is written, or like literally constantly getting mind blown. And he's a great fighter, so he's just honestly one of my favorite characters. And plus, one of the most badass scenes in the entire 2 movies, the ending battle where they're attacking the Emperor, and you see Stilgar come in on the sandworms through the sandstorm. Like, first, can we just talk about the way that looks, the shot? You have the enemy troops, the Emperor's troops, getting up from the nuke or missile blast that happened, and they're getting up, and they see this giant wall of dust from a dust storm, and then just I don't even like the sound, the bassiness, the rattling of the sand, and this giant sandworm comes out, and then 2 more come out following it, and it's just the most sick visual you could see in a movie. And then the camera cuts, and as the worm's descending and about to hit the sand, you see Stilgar with the Fremen army on the back of it riding it. He's like, yeah! And I'm like, oh shit! That is so sick. And then you see him ride in, assaulting the base. Here come the enemy orthopters, or whatever they're called. Fucking Freeman troops on top of the worm, just shooting them down with AA missiles. And I'm like, this is badass. Like, I don't know how one could not just look at this and just be like, wow, that is absolute peak cinema. Like, it is, whoa. I was just completely mind blown by that. Back to the characters. I think all the characters are great. The mom's a little weird to me, and I guess like I can see, I guess I'm still kind of lost on like what her true motive is. Maybe that's something that will come to fruition in part 3. Cause like some part of me is like, is she evil? Or is she doing this for the sake of her son? Like, what agenda is she pushing? Because, you know, even, what was Paul's dad's name? Leto? Atreides? I don't know. Whatever his dad's name was, he even said that she operates in the shadows and controls things from the shadows, and they plan. So, you know, her becoming a Reverend Mother while also being a Bene Gesserit, it's like, whoa, what is your overall play here? Like, why are you trying to spread the word of the prophet and kind of conform these people's minds to this one thing? Because you have your son that knows that you're doing that and doesn't like it, but then kind of goes with it because he knows that he has to be that guy in order to save the universe. If I get any of this wrong, feel free to correct me, because like I said, this is my first time watching both of them, and I honestly might rewatch them back in a couple days, or maybe just sometime in the future I'll rewatch them again to get that information re-soaked and picked up anything that I missed. But I just watched both of them and had to talk about it because there were some scenes in there, and just the movies overall in general are actual God tier movies. And if anybody wants to watch them, I would highly recommend watching them. And if you haven't already, do it. If you were thinking about it, if you were like me, that was like, Dune, like, it's in the like spice, there's a desert, there's weird orbs, they're like, some of the ships look like dildos with holes in it. It's like, what does this look? And then all of a sudden you watch the movie and you're like, I've been awakened. I understand everything now. Like, it's just one of the coolest, most interesting universes. And the fact that there's not a lot of guns or blasters that you would see in like in Star Wars or Star Trek, or maybe like any alternative sci-fi universe like Mass Effect, you know, or any of those, where you would picture most soldiers would have their blasters shooting lasers. It's like all blade. It's all hand-to-hand combat blade stuff. So it has this like medieval-ish, futuristic vibe and aesthetic to it that makes it incredibly unique. And I do like the fact that it's mostly all blades. I know their ships have cannons and missiles, and you know there's artillery and all this, but the fact that the fundamental troop-to-troop combat is hand-to-hand and sword is incredibly fascinating and just sick to me. So I had to rant about watching Dune. Thank you for listening if you made it this far on me rambling about Dune. The next show I might need to talk about is Game of Thrones, because I recently watched Game of Thrones for the first time all the way through, seasons 1 through 8. It might be one of my favorite TV shows of all time, but that'll be for another video. But thank you so much for watching. This has been Tall Man Flan. Go watch Dune if you haven't, and I'll see you next time.